Dear viewers and listeners of Khabar Hub and Radio Candid, Namaste and good afternoon. Welcome to a very special interview with Professor Chintamani Mahapatra. Professor Chintamani Mahapatra is currently rector at Jawaharlal Nehru University and professor of American Studies at the School of International Studies. He is also the editor of Indian Foreign Affairs Journal. He has held positions such as member, UGC Review Committee, Area Studies Program, member, Fellowship Expert Committee, ICSSR, editor, Indian Foreign Affairs Journal, member of Editorial Board, Strategic Analysis, IDSA, member, Editorial Board, Diaspora Studies, and member, Committee on Studies, Academy of International Studies, Jamia Millia Islamia. Recently, he was Tagore Chair, Professor at Yunnan University of China. He has conducted research in several US presidential libraries and US National Archives, British Public Record Office in London. Professor Mahapatra has authored 4 books, 1 edited volume, and has contributed chapters above 30 edited books. He has published around 70 research articles in reputed journals. He has been awarded a number of international fellowships such as Fulbright Fellowship, Commonwealth Fellowship, and Visiting Fellowship to undertake research in the US, UK, Austria, Australia, and many other countries. He has been a visiting faculty in several UGC-run academic staff colleges and Foreign Service Institute of the Ministry of External Affairs, National Defense College, Army War College, Naval War College, and the College of Air Warfare. He is also a regular commentator in newspaper and on audiovisual media on international affairs. Today we'll be discussing US foreign policy with Professor Mahapatra. Professor Mahapatra, the first question for today is, Iran and Russia are traditionally the natural allies of India. However, against the backdrop of the increasing cooperation between US-India relations, Russia and Iran now seem to have a closer alliance with China. How will this impact Indian interest in South Asia region in general and Afghanistan in particular?
Let me at the outset thank you, Dr. Pramod Jaiswal, for this opportunity to speak to people in Nepal about India's foreign policy. I thank you for that. Now, about the questions you raised just now, let me underline this fact that the former Soviet Union was a strategic partner of India. And after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Russia continued to be a strategic partner, but the intensity of the relationship was going up and down from time to time for a variety of reasons. But at the moment, Indo-Russian strategic partnership is still very important. And in the foreseeable future, this relationship will remain important both for Russia and for India. Now, because of tremendous amount of transformations in world politics, in geopolitics of Southern Asia, and so many other economic factors, there are areas where Russia and India did have different opinions. Now, these different views on certain issues did not come on the way of larger strategic partnership between India and Russia, and that partnership was never ruptured. Now that the situation has changed recently in a more robust way, and China has emerged as a new superpower in the region at least, if not in the whole world. And of course, we are undergoing a tremendous amount of strains and pressure, health crisis, economic downturn because of the pandemic. And then most recently, Taliban returning to power in Kabul. All these factors have created new issues between India and Russia. Let me underline that although Russia and China have become strategic partners, Russia and India are also strategic partners. And India-China relationship, except the border incident, was going on very smoothly for a long time. And we had enjoyed even a triangular relationship among Russia, China, and India. At the moment, the major challenge comes from Afghanistan because Taliban has come to power again. Now, the Americans, who actually intervened in Afghanistan in 2001 to remove Taliban from power, And then when they leave Afghanistan, the same Taliban has returned to power. What an irony. Russians, the Russian soldiers, particularly the Soviet soldiers during the Soviet era, were killed by a large number of members of the Taliban who were at that time were the Mujahideen forces or their friends and relatives were Mujahideen forces. But today, Russia sees Taliban in a slightly different way, not as an enemy. China, which did not have much to do with Afghanistan, even China-Taliban relationship is also moving in a positive trajectory as of now. In spite of all these developments, I am reasonably assured that Russia, India, and even Iran would find some common cause to maintain peace and stability in Afghanistan. To an extent, terrorism is not exported from Afghanistan anymore. So I would argue that despite differences on certain issues, Russia and India are strategic partners. Russia sells very, very important state-of-the-art weapon systems to India even now to the tune of billions of dollars. And Russia also extends cooperation to India in the civil nuclear field. That is why I would say that Russia and India will be together in South Asian affairs.
In 1999, you wrote an interesting paper titled India, China, and Russia, a strategic triangle is possible. How would you analyze the triangle in contemporary times?
Let me underline this fact that when the Russian Prime Minister Primakov came to India and first time proposed the idea of a triangular relationship consisting of India, China, Russia, in India, there was hardly any leading strategic analyst who supported the idea. Most of them said, no, China and India don't get along. They have a huge border problem. This triangular relationship will not be of any help. It's not going to take off. At that time, I wrote a small article in Strategic Analysis of IDSA where I argued that China, Russia, India triangle is possible. We do not have to think everything in military, defense, and strategic terms. Then I articulated the areas where these three countries could come together. Subsequently, we found that many analysts also came on board, and Russia, China, India enjoyed a strategic triangle, mostly on economic matters. Now, when you're raising the question about the relevance of this triangle, I continue to argue that on a number of issues, these three countries have convergence of views and even interests. On a number of issues, Russia, China, and India continue to have convergence of views and interests. For example, on climate change, on countering terrorism, on fighting drugs trafficking, creation of a multipolar world order, maintaining cybersecurity are the areas where this triangle is still very relevant. Now, the Sino-Indian differences over border, Indian reservations over the Belt and Road Initiative of China, and China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the issue related to freedom of navigation in South China Sea are certainly very difficult areas that need to be resolved, particularly between India and China. But for that matter, I would say that even China and Russia do not agree on each and every issue. They have their own differences, both in terms of long-term strategic interest as well as medium-term issues. They don't see eye to eye on very many issues. Despite these differences between China and India and Russia and China, the triangle is important. It is significant to highlight that China, Russia, and India work together in many important, relevant international forums. For example, BRICS. Recently, we had the BRICS summit. India was the chair. SCO in the very near future. We are going to have an SCO summit, East Asia Summit, ASEAN Regional Forum. In these international forums, Russia, China, and India, they play a very constructive role. So I would say that to your question, the strategic triangle, in my view, is still important and relevant, and it should be shaped properly.
Traditionally, India saw the South Asia region as her sphere of influence. However, the rise of China has been challenging India's role in the region. Do you think India has lagged behind China in her neighborhood? If so, why?
It's a very, very significant question. I would say that China has emerged as a superpower in recent years, and even the United States finds that it has lagged behind China on some areas, not just India, but even the United States. For instance, trade, foreign investment, foreign exchange reserves are the key areas where Chinese economy is doing very well. China is the #1 importer in the world, #1 exporter in the world, #1 consumer of luxury goods in the world. And even China is #1 banker to the United States because it has bought many treasury bonds of the USA. So it is clearly evident that China has more resources to invest even in South Asia or give grants in aid to South Asian countries. However, geography binds India with all the South Asian countries. Secondly, South Asian countries share a broad civilizational and cultural affinity with each other for centuries. Third, India and South Asian countries are part of an important regional grouping called SAARC. It has its own drawbacks, no doubt about it, but there are certain strong areas of cooperation among all the SAARC members, which cannot be underestimated. Fourth, Belt and Road Initiative of China and some of the economic practices characterized by many analysts as predatory of China threaten the advantages China has earned in recent years in South Asia. India's neighborhood policy has survived many challenges, and it will remain robust into the foreseeable future. And when I say that China threatens the economies of South Asia, I am saying that keeping in mind the latest example, how the Hambantota port, built by China, and Sri Lanka took a large loan, and subsequently Sri Lanka could not even do the debt servicing. In the process, China and Sri Lanka signed an agreement, and that Hambantota port is going to be operated by China for 99 years. More recently, Sri Lanka has declared an economic emergency. Their economy is going down, 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 because they have fallen into a debt trap. So there is a growing realization in the region that Chinese economic practices are not very healthy because it is creating debt, huge amount of debt. So that is why, while India is lagging behind on certain areas, and China has made tremendous amount of inroads in South Asia, there is of late a realization that a balance must be struck, and India, that is why, will continue to be an important player in all kinds of South Asian affairs.
Among the numerous existing challenges between China and India, the border dispute between the two countries remains most imperative. How can China and India resolve the border dispute together? What are the grounds for cooperation between Delhi and Beijing?
This is a very good question, because China-India differences, China-India even minimized conflict would not be in the interest of the region. When China and India would cooperate, it would be good for both the countries and for the regional countries as well. So let me underline this fact, that the only way to solve this issue, that is the border issue between the two, is through dialogue and diplomacy. War is no longer an option, because Southern Asia has become nuclearized. China is a nuclear weapon power, so is India. So war is not the solution to resolve any problem. Maybe in the past, China, India fought a war and a few border skirmishes, but now it would be more harmful for both of them and for the region. Recent Chinese adventurism against Bhutan, Nepal, and India along the borders have actually reduced Chinese goodwill. Although the governments may not make statements, very strong statements against China, the strategic analysts, the strategic communities in all these three countries, they understand that whatever goodwill China was gaining, it lost because of the adventurism along the border with Bhutan, Nepal, and India. The trade and commerce that was flourishing between India and China, and even people-to-people contact was rising by the day, have come under new questions over the Chinese intention. Status quo needs to be restored. Confidence building measures between the two countries should be in place as soon as possible before any delay. And economic cooperation should be enhanced. And side by side, serious and sincere dialogue should be held to resolve the border issue. If the border issue is postponed all the time, then other kinds of cooperation is no longer possible. So in my view, these are the ways Delhi and Beijing can sort out their problems and move ahead for the betterment of the Indo-Pacific region.
The exit of US and subsequent Taliban's control of Afghanistan has broken the old status quo of the region, and a new regional order is going to emerge. How are you observing the transition of the new regional order from an Indian perspective? What sort of approaches should India adopt to adjust to a new phenomenon?
The current strategic environment in Southern Asia is full of challenges. The United States has now turned its back on Afghanistan, on South Asia, and many other global engagements as well. Probably the United States is going to be more inward looking in the foreseeable future. It will be more inward looking, but China's activities, on the other hand, is rising very fast. However, even China's BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, apparently is under challenge. Number one, from the pandemic. Number two, its terms and conditions of collaborations with other countries. And number three, the theory of peaceful rise of China has lost its relevance due to the flexing of Chinese military muscle in South China Sea, in East China Sea, and along Sino-Indian border. The return of the Taliban, another point, the return of the Taliban spells disaster for that country. It is in for a humanitarian crisis, a huge economic crisis. And it, at the same time, the instability in Afghanistan threatens intensification of terrorist activities in the region. So what should India do and what can India do? In my view, India needs to beef up its security. India needs to redesign its methods and approaches to tackle terrorism. Further, activate its diplomacy to generate consensus in the international community so that there can be a multilateral, coordinated approach to stop the terrorist financing, stem the small arms proliferation, and improve intelligence sharing. It's only when the international community together will do these three things: no more money to the terrorist groups, no more supply of weapons to them, and then timely sharing of intelligence. Then only we can meet this challenge at the moment, in my view.
Thank you, sir. A stronger political push for an economic decoupling from China has been a hot topic of political discourse in all the Quad countries, including the European Union and G7. How do you see the potential role of initiatives like Blue Dot Network and B3W in this process? Will the initiatives provide a viable alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative?
Dr. Jaiswal, I have a slightly different opinion from many others on this particular question of decoupling from China. In my view, decoupling from China is a knee-jerk reaction to the origin of COVID-19 pandemic in China and China's unwillingness to share the information in time with the international community. China's trade and investment practices also are being questioned by the United States and its allies. China's ambitious BRI projects are also not seen to be transparent and environment friendly. It rather generates a lot of debt burden in the recipient countries. However, I would not think that decoupling is a right way of doing things. China is an economic superpower. There is no question about it. And its economy is now interdependent with the rest of the world, with Africa, with Latin America, with Europe, with even the United States and the Indo-Pacific countries. So in my view, what is important is not decoupling, not cutting off ties with China. We should not isolate China. We should not neglect China. What is important is to develop alternative ways on even supply chains and so many other things, so that the dependence of the global economy on China can be reduced. And decoupling would be more harmful. But reducing dependence on China and developing alternative networks, including the DOT network and B3W initiatives, are actually steps in that right direction. Those are all welcome developments in my view.
What are your expectations from the forthcoming first in-person Quad Summit that is to be held later this month in Washington, D.C.? What areas will India be looking forward to discuss during the meet?
This first in-person Quad meeting is going to take place on 10th September. It is already announced. And the first in-person Quad meeting in Washington is actually a very clear indication that Quad is on its way to become slowly institutionalized as a security dialogue forum. President Donald Trump activated a Quad which was lying dormant for almost for a decade or so. And President Joe Biden, his successor, becomes the first American president to elevate the dialogue process among the four countries, India, Australia, USA, and Japan, to the summit level. And that was seen in the virtual summit that took place among the leadership of all these four countries. Now, what are the issues that they are likely to talk? I do not think that they are going to discuss about how to contain China or how to constrain China. I think Quad will think much bigger than only China-focused debate and discussion. What they are likely to discuss are different kind of challenges posed by the pandemic. The whole world is gripped with a health crisis. No single country can come to terms with it. International collaboration is a must. Even during the virtual summit, this vaccine discussion was a very, very important theme. So this is going to be discussed. Return of the Taliban in Kabul is a major security development because terrorism is likely to come back. There are Al-Qaeda forces in Afghanistan even now. There are ISIS-K forces in Afghanistan even now. Although the Taliban are making statements that they are not going to support them, the fact remains that there was a bomb blast, huge one, in the Kabul airport when there was evacuation. And the American troops, which had already withdrawn 6,000 of them return to maintain peace and order in the Kabul airport. That's an indication that return of the Taliban is also going to be return of different kind of terrorist activities. May not be by Taliban directly, but other outfits are there, including Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba. There is another issue which will certainly be discussed in the Quad summit, in my view, is how to tackle the economic challenges in the post-pandemic world. Economy of almost every country in the world is facing tremendous amount of downturn, unemployment crisis, industries are going bankrupt. So how to handle that is a very, very big issue. Chinese economy apparently is doing well, but the opportunity cost for even China is so huge. The kind of economic benefit that China would have got without the pandemic is huge. So that is why this is an issue. How to restore stability in international political economy is a key issue that they're going to talk. Then, of course, the cyberspace is invaded by all kinds of hackers. And that is creating a new kind of security challenge, both internally and externally to many countries. So they will have a discussion on how to secure the cyberspace. And of course, without underestimating it, the big picture of maintaining peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific is going to be one of the key items in the agenda in the forthcoming Quad summit.
How can the US and India work together on neutralizing China's growing presence in the region?
Even here, Dr. Jaiswal, I have a slightly different take. In my view, the goal of Indo-US strategic partnership is not to neutralize the Chinese presence in the region. China is very much part of this region in terms of its geographical location, deep economic engagements in areas of trade and commerce and investment and so many other areas. What is of real concern, in my view, is some of the Chinese policies. For example, sovereignty claims over disputed land and maritime regions, use of force by China to pressurize smaller countries, backing unsavory regimes in the Indo-Pacific, North Korea, for example, not coming clean on opposing known terrorists in the UN Security Council, and then unfair foreign economic practices that China has been doing, and Americans and other West European countries, European countries are putting pressure on China not to do so. And finally, I would say, unacceptable terms and conditions of the BRI projects, which is leading to one after the other smaller economies falling into the debt trap. These are the key issues. The goal is not to neutralize. What is the goal then? The goal of India-US strategic partnership, and probably many other countries in the region, should be and is to make China a sincere stakeholder in international politics, trade and economic practices. The Indo-US strategic partnership also aims at upholding the rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific in the face of Chinese efforts to disrespect international law and in asserting illegally Chinese sovereignty over a vast expanse of waters in South China Sea. The Chinese claim an area which is as large as India in the waters of the South China Sea. These are the issues where Indo-US strategic partnership would like to address by talking with the Chinese, dialoguing with them through diplomacy, and if necessary, by developing coordination with other countries so that China becomes a stakeholder along with others and there is peace, stability, and win-win situation for every country in the world.
Thank you, sir. This year, Prime Minister Modi personally wished Dalai Lama on his birthday, and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met a representative of Dalai Lama in New Delhi, a move likely to anger Beijing. Does this mean that India is on its way to play Tibet card in its dealing with China?
China, unfortunately, let me re-emphasize, looks at Dalai Lama in terms of its narrow political pressure. After annexing Tibet by use of massive force in 1959, exercising now total control over Tibetan affairs and ensuring settlement of large number of Han Chinese people in the Tibet region, Beijing has little to fear from Dalai Lama, who came to India as a refugee and who stays on and who is becoming old. China, unfortunately, wants to paint the spiritual leader as an unacceptable and secessionist politician who intends to liberate Tibet from Chinese control. The whole world respects the Dalai Lama as a spiritual leader and not as a political leader. And China should not object to world leaders meeting Dalai Lama, greeting Dalai Lama, or even offering salutations to Dalai Lama. After escaping the wrath of the international community over what it has done, that is what China has done to freedom-loving people in Hong Kong and the Uyghur Muslim population in Xinjiang province, China's fear and apprehension over Dalai Lama has no credibility at all. After taking over the political reign of power in Hong Kong, and then what China has been doing in Xinjiang, do they really worry that a Dalai Lama in India is going to create problem in Tibet? Not credible at all. What China needs to do is uphold the human rights of the Tibetans, stop suppressing people in that state, and allow cultural and social autonomy to people of Tibet. Had China done all that, its fear and apprehension about the world leaders meeting and getting Dalai Lama would have disappeared. India does not have to play a Tibet card. China needs to stop playing the POK card, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir card, and start respecting the social and cultural autonomy of the Tibetan people and not try to crush that with its policies and practices. So in my view, China has to alter its attitude and approach towards Tibet, and the world will not do anything about that. And the Dalai Lama should not be the target of China anymore.
Professor Chintamani Mahapatra, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.